the talk that I'm going to give tonight is based on this passage that I read recently, and I think I told some of you guys about this in class at some point. But it was a book actually that a student gave to me, and then I again read it in this other book that a different student had given to me already, and so I figured we might as well talk about it. It's in 2 books. So there's an ancient Chinese philosopher, Chuang Tzu, and he came after Lao Tzu, and some similarities and differences, but I really like this guy. He's funny and super deep. So there's one passage here called The Empty Boat, and I'm going to skip ahead to the part I like. If a man is crossing a river and an empty boat collides with his own skiff, even though he be a bad-tempered man, he will not become very angry. But if he sees a man in the boat, he will shout at him to steer clear. If the shout is not heard, he will shout again and yet again and begin cursing, and all because there's somebody in the boat. Yet if the boat were empty, he would not be shouting and not angry. If you can empty your own boat, crossing the river of the world, no one will oppose you. No one will seek to harm you. So it got me thinking about a lot of stuff. The first thing that comes to mind is just this question of why do we get angry and how does that happen? And it's a funny scenario to envision, somebody crossing a river and another boat runs into your boat, and it's like, who would get mad at that? I'm sure that there are some people who would get mad at that, because there are some people who are just always looking for an excuse to get mad. But really, like if you are at all present, you'll realize most people, if they're looking down and they're rowing their boat and they hit something or something collides with them, their instinct is like, what's going on? Who hit me with their boat? And then you look up and you see there's nobody there. Oh, there's nobody there. There's no reason for me to get mad. And it's like we get mad because we experience some kind of like something's not fair, or it's like something's being done to me and I'm a victim, or it comes from this, really it's an attachment to the way that we want things to be, the way that we expect things to be. And for a lot of people, it's to this concept of like a cosmic fairness, like a universal set of rules and laws, that it's like it should be this way. And there are universal, there are cosmic rules, there are laws, there's no question, but they don't always work the way that we want or expect them to. And it's funny that we get so attached to things being the way that we expect or the way that we want them to be, and then when it doesn't go our way, we're like, well, somebody is making me mad, and it's like somebody else's fault, or it's something else's fault. It's whatever the circumstances are. But that's silly, because you're the one getting mad. It's totally you. It's your thoughts, it's your response, it's your reaction to it. So I just earlier today I was like, we're going to talk about this. Let's see what psychologists have to say about it. And so I just Googled, why do we get angry? And so if you want, any of the best, deepest stuff that I give in meditation class, just Google and you'll get it. So this is by a doctor, I can't remember his name. He's a psychologist. His first name is Ryan, so he must know some stuff. So he's referencing Dr. Jerry Diefenbacher's 1996 model of anger, and it talks about a few different concepts. But the first thing is the trigger event. So in this scenario, the trigger event is a canoe runs into your boat, and there's supposedly anytime anybody gets angry, there's always some kind of a trigger event. And it could be whatever, getting cut off in traffic, being insulted by a coworker, are the ones that this person uses. But it's like I just said, these people think that their anger is caused by something else, this situation or whatever. And the implication here is that those events, whatever it is, directly caused the anger, which is ridiculous because it didn't go into your brain and like tinker and like fire your anger, receptors, or however that works. So if that were true, that these events caused the anger, then everybody would react in the same way to these same events. And as we know, that's certainly not true. In fact, well, this is never going to happen to you, but if you were, in my family, you would spend time with both me and my brother in the same place. And my brother used to be very different from how he is now. Now he meditates and he's a pretty chill dude. But he used to live in New York, and people aren't like that over there. So we would be in the same situation. The same thing would be happening to us for most of our lives, actually. The same thing happened to both of us. We weren't twins, but we're only 2 years apart. And my brother would react very differently from me. I would react like, oh, like that's my reaction. Like, let me just take a step back. Huh. And this is, to whatever. Like if I get cut off in traffic or somebody hits me with their car, and my brother would react very differently with a sense of like the gravest injustice has been done to him. Like, I can't believe, how dare you? And it's like, we share a lot of the same genes and the same experiences in life, and so how does this happen? I don't know that part of it. But I know that people do not react the same way to the same situations. So clearly it comes down to, the individual. And so the next part he talks about is individual characteristics. So he said personality traits and the pre-anger state are the two main things that contribute to this. So if you talk about personality traits, it's like somebody might be narcissistic or competitive, or this says low frustration tolerance, which you can, I guess, assume kind of what that means. So if you are really competitive, they use the example of driving down the street, somebody gets cut off. And if you are very competitive, you treat driving like you're in a race with everybody else on the street. And I'll be honest, sometimes that's me. And I only know this because I got about 6 speeding tickets in the span of the first 2 years that I learned how to drive. And it was because I was always the fastest car on the road. I'm always like, oh, if I'm not driving a little bit faster than everybody else, I'm losing. Like, I'm not driving the way that I'm supposed to be. And I realized this after getting tickets and after practicing martial arts, that that's not actually the way to drive. You should not drive like you're constantly in NASCAR trying to get to the finish line first. In fact, that's not a way to live your life in general. If you're always living like, I've got to hurry up and get to the next thing and beat everybody else around me, it's not going to go very well, because you're not going to be the fastest car on the road, or you will get a ticket. You're not going to be the best at everything. You're not going to get there first. There's always going to be somebody better than you. And so to be able to not always compare yourself to other things and not be attached to that is really useful and helpful. A narcissistic person, in the same scenario of getting cut off, they think that they're the most important person on the road. And so they're irritated by the other driver for that reason. So, people with different traits, they still might react with anger. But then there's like other people where when I get cut off now, the first thought that I have is, oh, that's funny, that person's in a hurry. I know this because I've cut people off in traffic. Not usually anymore, but I used to all the time. If I got to be the fastest person on the road, I'm constantly cutting everybody off. And so I think to myself, this person must be in a situation like I was in the last time I cut somebody off. And it's stupid for me to get mad at somebody else for doing the same thing that I've done 100 times. So I'm just going to take a breath and be cool with it. That's it. That's not how I used to be. I used to react with some kind of anger and then kind of have to talk myself down off the ledge. But now it's pretty much just an automatic thing. That's just the first thought that I come to. And it's just from practice, from meditation. So the second part of it is as we said, the pre-something state, the pre-anger state. Okay, so maybe somebody is already having a bad day, and they get cut off by somebody in traffic. Or I was talking about this earlier today. I saw a couple of years ago, actually, I saw somebody stopped at the side of a road, and she was like looking on her phone for directions, and somebody pulled up, so she was kind of like half in, half out of the lane, just stopped at an intersection. Somebody pulls up behind her, obviously in a hurry and pissed off, and just lays on the horn, and she just immediately flies out the car, runs over to the guy's door, and starts giving him hell, like bloody murder. She's screaming and cursing at him, and I'm just walking down the street like, this is interesting. And they argue, they go back and forth, and this, you could very easily see this coming to blows. The guy jumps out. I mean, probably more likely if it was a man yelling at another man, because some men don't think that women know how to fight. But I know that's not true. But that's what happens when people get into a fight. It's because two people want to fight. And if the woman who was sitting there looking at her directions wasn't already kind of frustrated at not knowing where she was or where she was going, and the guy came up behind her and laid on her horn, she would have just rolled down her window and gone like this, like, go ahead, buddy, it's fine. But no, she was looking for a fight. She was ready to go. So she jumped right out and she let him have it. And this is like, if you go around kind of in this state, always ready to jump down somebody's throat or like to get angry, then it's just going to happen more often. And so maybe spend some more time meditating and practicing martial arts and Tai Chi and just like being happy in general. Like read happy stuff and watch happy shows. And then there's the appraisal of the situation. So this is kind of like what I was talking about, where the trigger event happens, and then whatever your state is, maybe you're more prone to anger or not, but you kind of appraise it and decide how you're going to feel about it. So you're rowing and you hit a boat, and you either just immediately do a bad appraisal. You just immediately get angry. You're like, who the hell is hitting my boat? Or you do a little bit of a better job and you look and you see there's nobody in this boat. Okay, I can relax. It's like we're always given this opportunity. We don't usually take it. And this whole talk till now has been kind of around anger, but it's really around any emotional state. And there's always some kind of a trigger event. There's something that happens that then we usually like to blame our reaction on. And we have this opportunity to look at what's happening and decide, this is a bad thing, this is a good thing. I'm going to get angry about this or I'm not. You might even decide, if you've really been meditating for a while, this is a bad thing, and I'm not going to get angry about it. Or you can have the choice to do the flip. So some of you guys heard me answer Henri's question in class earlier this week. He said, Sifu, I recognize that the air conditioner has been out, and if that happened to me and I was paying rent somewhere, I would be furious. I would be so angry at the landlord. And he's like, how are you not angry? And I said to him, well, actually, like sometimes I decide, I'm not by nature an angry person anymore because I just don't see the use in it until I see the use in it. And so we used to have terrible leaks. Like I would come in here every day during the raining season and there'd be puddles on the mats. And every time I called the landlord and the landlord sends somebody out to fix it, they slop some tar up on the roof and it moves the leak 5 feet over, and then it leaks there. And eventually I was like, if I keep telling to do this, it's going to start leaking like on our computer. So I came in one day and the dojo was just like flooded, just a ridiculous puddle. And so I decided, all right, now I'm going to get angry, or I'm at least going to seem angry. And so I picked up the phone and I called, and it was at like 7 in the morning. There was nobody there. So I called and I left what appeared to be a very angry voicemail. And it was like, I've called you several times. This situation has not been resolved. My students are not enjoying getting dripped on, and fix the roof. And it was very clear in my tone of voice that something needed to happen. And so they actually came over and did a slightly better job of fixing the roof, and it kind of didn't leak so much anymore. Like it did something. And I really like Sifu Brown's advice on this, because Sifu Brown, if you have ever heard me talk about Sifu Brown, I will say everything amazing about him, and included in that is he's a very difficult boss. Like, he is demanding, and a lot of people can't handle it. But I asked him about it, and he said, like, sometimes it's very useful to seem angry because people will listen to you. And if you have the ability to either appear angry or to actually allow yourself to be angry for the amount of time that you want to be angry for, sometimes stuff just gets done. And I happen to think that there are very few situations in which it actually helps, or situations where I feel like I want to be angry, but sometimes I do, and I let it happen. It's not the way that most people deal with emotions. The deal with most people is the thing happens and you just have the response, you have the reaction. There's no like deciding. So this is one of the things that we can get through meditation, is the ability to, when a boat hits our boat, take a beat, take a breath, and look at it and realize there's nobody in that boat. Or if it's like a kid and they're purposefully hitting your boat over and over and over again, you can decide, I'm going to get mad and yell at this kid, and then they're going to leave me alone. But the deeper idea behind this is this like recognition that really all boats are empty. So when we take offense or we're attached to things, that comes from us thinking that, I'm in my boat, this is my boat, and that's your boat, and you're in it, and you're hitting my boat, and you're doing something wrong. But really, that person, it's like, what, have you never really run into anything with your boat before? On like a real basic level, you can look at it that way, or you can look at it like, well, this is just, that's just a soul over there. That's just like a part of the universe over there. And they happen to be running a boat into my boat. And I'm just a part of the universe over here. It's really just essentially two boats colliding with nobody in either one. There's no real need to get angry about it. There's no real need to just fly off the handle. But we don't see things that way. Naturally, we see things as like this person versus me. And it's like when you're out there on the river, it's like my boat versus your boat. Just like when you're driving down the street, it's my car versus your car. And when we really get the experience of meditating and recognizing what's beyond the small self and the ego, you recognize that maybe only for a fleeting moment, but you get like all boats are empty. There is nobody in that boat who's put there to piss you off. There is no cosmic injustice happening here. What's happening is just this, this atom is running into this atom. If they happen to be on the front of a boat, they could also just be, molecules of air bumping into each other. There's no real difference there for all that matters on a grand scale. So it's maybe a fun experiment for you and for me to go out into the world and recognize, when you're getting angry, what is happening and what's your what's your response to it? What is it that you're seeing as an injustice? What is it that you're seeing as somebody is imposing on you or doing something to you that you're a victim of? And is that really the way that you want to handle it? And you might decide this is the way that I want to handle it, or you might decide I want to do something else. But recognize your immediate reaction comes from the ego. Your immediate reaction comes from your attachment to some kind of an idea of the way that things are supposed to be. And the truth is that in life and in the world and in the universe, things are not the way that they are supposed to be. There is no supposed to be. And the attachments that we have in our mind are very seldom aligned with reality. So just look out there and see, all these cars driving by, they're empty. Most of them drive like there's nobody behind the wheel. But really, there's nobody there for you to get angry at. There's nobody there for you to take offense from. And just take a step back. So what we're going to do tonight is practice meditation and recognize that every moment that we spend going within, recognizing the thoughts that we're having and choosing to let them go and come back to the breath is the same process that we would undergo in that very scenario, where something happens, we have a thought about it, we get to take a chance to step back and let it go and move on to whatever it is that the response we want to have is. Sit, comfortable.